Hello there, my name is David Pustansky and today we will be taking a look at this. This is the Evercade VS or Evercade Versus. I'm not 100% sure on the correct pronunciation. As long as it plays great games, that's all that matters to me. But all that matters to you today is answering the question, should you buy this thing? Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to break down everything you need to know, and we're going to be answering the question, should you buy it? Now, if you are not familiar with the Evercade brand, then let's give a very quick history lesson. A couple of years ago, we got this. This is the original Evercade, which is a handheld gaming system. Evercade idea is based around like retro games mostly, or retro style games, and you get them on physical media. That's a big part of what this is all about. Nowadays you get everything and it's downloads and things getting removed from stores so you can't get it anymore, and like games like not being updated, so then you lose them to time. As things go more and more onto the cloud and you're streaming games, things can get shut down and they have gone forever, but not the Evercade. If you have an Evercade cartridge, you have got those games forever, and that is a big part of the appeal of the Evercade. And it got like retro style like controls, it has like form factor which is going to be familiar for people that played like the Game Boy Advance or the Game Gear, the Atari Lynx, and that's what the Evercade was. The Evercade Versus takes all of those ideas from the handheld and makes it into a home console. Now you can have like 4 players with multiple ports on the front here. You can, like, we're going to show a lot of detail on this in a second, but you can put in 2 carts at once, which is really cool. And so the big question is, like, you can ask yourself, do you want the Evercade, whether you want the handheld or you want the home one? We're going to try to answer that for you today. But say you've already got the Evercade handheld, do you need the Evercade Versus? And that is the bigger question. And if you've got this, do you in turn eventually need to get the handheld? We're going to answer, because they're kind of for the same people, but they're also kind of for like different types of gamers. So depending whether you like to play games on the go or whether you want to have like couch co-op, then they're both going to have you sorted one way or another. First of all though, to look at the Evercade VS, let's talk about its design. Now the design of it here clearly takes inspiration from a few sources. Like the red and white design is definitely like a more than a nod and a wink to the original Nintendo Famicom, but more so the design takes a cue from the original Nintendo Entertainment System, which is like the US and European name for the Famicom. So it takes a lot of inspiration from Nintendo basically, and that is that, look at this, like the original NES, it's got like this flap that opens and then you slide the cartridges in, and that's a very cool feature. It's very cool. It also means that you don't have cartridges sticking out the top, so you could in theory put something on top of it, although that would be naughty and you shouldn't. And there is this grill just to make sure that it doesn't overheat, so you don't want to put too much on it, but certainly just whilst you're storing it you can like place your controller on top and there's not going to be a cartridge in the way. But let's have a look. Now, one of the things that's worth noting is that the games are cross-compatible from the Evercade to the Evercade Versus. And just to open this up again, my one does have a bit of a click. I don't know if they're all supposed to have that click. I'm going to be honest, I don't 100% enjoy that click. It feels like something's about to snap, but I'm just going to run with it for now. So as we can see, you can fit in 2 cartridges, and I'm going to take one out there, and then let's see if I can manage to juggle this in my hands. Take the cartridge directly out of the Evercade and put it into the Evercade VS. So the cartridges from one will go into the other, which is great, because that means that whichever system you get, you know that the games that you get for it, you can use them on a couple of different things. Let's just put that back into the Evercade. Now, one thing that's very cool about this is that by being able to have 2 cartridges in at once, when you switch on the machine, it displays all of the games which are in both collections. So say I put in the Worms collection, and at the moment I've got the Bitmap Brothers collection in there. You'll see all of the Bitmap Brothers games, Chaos Engine, etc, etc, Speedball, and then boom, you put in Worms whilst the machine is still on, and blop, it's going to come up and show you the Worms games, and you'll be able to choose from 2 different libraries of publishers' games at the same time. Now, the games don't stay on screen once you take them out, which is a little bit of a shame. One thing I would have liked about it, on the Nintendo Switch, if you put a game's cartridge in there and then you take it out, it will still show like the artwork for it, and it will just have this little symbol to tell you that this isn't a download title, you need to insert the cartridge. And I just wish there was like a gallery mode to show all of the games from all of the collections that you'd ever put into your device. Maybe they'll add that with an update in the future, who knows? And when I say about updates, now, one of the things I did mention earlier is that the original Evercade, it's not connectable to the internet, it's not all about downloads and all that. You do get games on physical media, but they have added the ability for this to connect to the internet, and this allows them to do updates for the system, which I just see that's a positive. I don't think they're ever going to add like an online store. I don't know how much memory they've got in this thing, and certainly there is no sign that you can add a memory card into it anywhere to expand the memory. If they were to add an online store later, then maybe they'll release like some USB flash drive that you can plug in to be able to download games to, but the Evercade is so not about that, then I doubt they'll do it. It might be that we get like an EverDrive style cartridge if they wanted to release official ones, where you can like put in an SD card and then be able to download games that way. But again, I just don't think it's what the Evercade is all about, so I don't expect they'll ever do it, unless perhaps in a couple of years' time they're going to release like the Evercade download edition. Who knows? They might. Who knows? Time will tell. Let's deal with what we've got here. So you can plug in 2 cartridges. That's very cool. That is an advantage over the original Evercade, because you can only plug in 1, and that's just a little bit of convenience, that you can have the libraries of 2 games at once, 2 game collections I should say, to be able to bounce back and forth between. You can then plug in multiple controllers. Now let's talk about the controllers for a moment. The controller that you get with it, and I got the premium pack which came with 2 controllers, is this bad boy. Now this here, I'm just going to pop down the Evercade so I can show you a couple of pieces of inspiration for this controller. This controller, just in terms of its design, when I looked at it, the first thing I thought of, well, look at the square shape, it's a little bit like the original NES controller, but whereas this one is completely rectangle, this one does have a little bit more shape, which kind of means to me that it's kind of halfway between an NES controller and a Super NES controller, because they've both got these bits that sort of dip down there. It's a minor design thing. It does mean that you don't get sharp corners going into your hands as you're playing with this controller, but of course then it does have the A, B, X, Y and shoulder buttons, which do make it closer to a Super Nintendo controller than the NES. The thing that's interesting about this controller compared to the original Evercade is that the original Evercade only has L and R buttons, whereas this has L1 and L2 and R1 and R2 buttons, which actually means that it is in line with the original PS1 controller. Now, with the games that have come out on the Evercade, we have seen on the Bitmap Brothers collection, it has Speedball 2000, which has got 3D graphics. We've got Worms Armageddon, I believe, on the Worms collection, which was a game that was on PC, but also PS1 and N64. So the Evercade is powerful enough to be able to run games from that era, and now this means that it does have the controls to be able to play anything up to the PS1. That this didn't come with analog sticks, it's a shame, but they're keeping things mostly parity between the original Evercade and the Evercade Versus, because the games go back and forth between the two. Now, I haven't played a game that uses the L2 R2 yet, and I can't quite imagine how they're going to program that into a game that you would then play on the original Evercade that doesn't have the L2 R2. I'm sure they'll just be able to recognise on future games that if it's in the original Evercade, we'll have a slightly different control scheme. Who knows? Now, it's also got a home button here, and that just brings up the menu. You can do save states on this thing. You can change the graphical effects to be pixel perfect. And when you play with the Evercade VS, it comes up in 1080p on your TV. I think this would only be $720, because yes, if you weren't aware, this does have like a micro or mini HDMI port, so that you can plug this into your television and get the image from the Evercade onto your TV. You don't get it on the TV and the screen at the same time like you would with like the Nintendo Wii U, where sometimes you could do that. Now, the other things to talk about is that I think I mentioned that this does connect to the internet, the Evercade VS, and I'm sure the idea in the future is that they're going to add so you can have online play, and that's going to be cool when they add it. Like having 4 ports, I'll be honest, I've just had this and I play these games single player because I think that was your only option on the original Evercade, but I certainly may be able to get a couple of 2-player games in there, but I'm not sure what from the Evercade collection of games is actually 4-player. There's going to be a few games here or there, but I couldn't tell you what they are off the top of my head. Now, the other thing about the controller ports before we move on from there is they are USB, and it does mean that you can use other controllers beyond just using like the Evercade one. Now, I haven't tested this yet, but anything with a USB in theory should be able to go in there, and so if you do want to play PS1 style games, then this perhaps is going to be a more comfortable controller in your hand for a lot of the retro games. And what I did try it with though was this Xbox One controller, and it worked fine, but for one thing. The D-pad was great, the face buttons were great. I'm not sure if I tried it on anything that required the shoulder buttons, but when I had the idea, the silly, foolish idea, that perhaps if I was to use the control stick, that this would just mirror the mapping of the D-pad, it did not work. And it wasn't just that it was dead, it sent my game a little bit crazy. I tried it on Tempest from the Atari collection, and I tried it on a Dizzy game from the Oliver Twins collection, and poor little Dizzy, he was going about all over the place. I tried to make him walk right, he was walking left and right, he was rolling, he was jumping upwards, he was doing all kinds of things, and I really had to press onto the D-pad to try to get him back under control. So I don't know why it really didn't like the control stick, but it didn't. And then I tried another one, if I've got it to hand here. I tried it with a Google Stadia controller, I should say. This is a little bit of a joke, not that many people use it, but I had it just in a drawer and I figured I'd try it, and this actually works with it well, except for the same control stick issue. Now, the one other controller I did try with it was the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, and I don't know if perhaps this didn't charge and perhaps this was like dead battery wise, but it didn't recognize it at all. It didn't like move the characters using any of the buttons, nothing happened, except I did notice one thing. For some reason, whilst I was playing the Oliver Twins collection and I had this plugged in, the game started juddering, and I've got no idea if that was because of this. Who knows? The point is though, as cool as it is to play with a more comfortable controller in the hand, if you're getting an Evercade, it's probably because you want that retro experience. And so if you can use like this PlayStation Classic controller on it, obviously the NES Mini and Super Nintendo Mini controllers have a different connection point than USB, so you wouldn't be able to use them. But for me, this is light in the hand. It's certainly a lot lighter than holding this in your hands, and the D-pad is a little bit like mushy, like there's like a lot of gap around it. It feels like it's gonna get some dirt in there or something. The shoulder buttons there, this isn't the greatest controller. Like, what I can say, if you are familiar, just to show you this other controller with the Retron 5, you've got this big square controller that you had on that as well, and this is an awful controller, and I can say 100% that this is a much better controller to use. And there is something about playing retro games with a retro style controller which just adds to it, you know. And even though this isn't exactly the same as a Super Nintendo or like a Mega Drive controller or anything like this, I think if you play like these retro games with this more retro feeling controller, it's just going to add to the experience, and you'll create new memories based around playing with this controller. It's not the best one, but it's far from the worst controller that I've ever used. Let's just show you, here we see the Evercade versus Premium Pack
packaging. It comes, when you get it, it comes with 2 cartridges, and these are from the arcade series. Now, the original Evercade, and they're all cross-compatible, but like the original boxes, all are numbered. So here we see Bitmap Brothers Collection is number 22. This comes, and they come in like a red themed box. The Evercade Versus comes with these arcade collections, which start back from the number 1. So Technos collection, and then the Data East Arcade Collection 1. There were collections of both of these companies that have already come out, which you can play, but these are obviously the arcade versions. And these being arcade games, you know, again, I haven't put it to the test yet, and I'm not reviewing these games here. I will do another video to review these. These ones, I think there's probably quite a few like multiplayer games. Yeah, I should imagine like Double Dragon, that's definitely multiplayer. Like Mania Challenge Wrestling, that's going to be multiplayer, and I'm sure a bunch of the other ones are as well. I haven't massively played these yet. Like in terms of Data East, Technos, like Double Dragon, Burger Time, these are big games to the point where they like mention them on the front here, but I think there are better collections on the Evercade. But it's still cool to get these like in the premium pack when you buy this edition. This edition obviously also comes with 2 of these controllers. One thing I'm going to mention actually that I didn't mention earlier is I put the system to update. And when I put the system to update, like it came back on, and like you could do like a download update because it can connect to the internet. And I think that's pretty much the only thing you can do internet wise until they add like online play, which I think they're doing. I might be wrong in saying that. But when it reset, I got this weird text coming up on the screen. I thought I had literally bricked the system. I was recording at the time just so I could get footage for this video, so I'll put it on the screen round about now so that you can see what was coming up. But then it just reset again and it works hunky-dory, so that's absolutely fine. One thing that's cool, which I may or may not have mentioned, is that when you switch the machine on, and in fact let me show you this, when you switch it on, so speaking of thinking that something could have gone wrong, just flicking the switch doesn't do anything. You have to hold it down and boom, then it will light up, and you can see it's got like the white light that comes along there. Then it goes blue. I don't know why. It may just be like a special effect, or maybe it's connecting to the internet, or I don't know what it's doing. But in a moment it's going to go like a nice red colour, which is what it will be throughout most of the time when you're playing it. Now, here's one thing. I did mention with the original Evercade that the idea is that you have like physical media, and if you've got physical media, then you've got that game forever and it's not going away. But there is something that absolutely we have to talk about today, and that is that this is not 100% compatible with all of the Evercade cartridges that are 100% compatible with this. And in particular, there is currently just 2 cartridges where there is like an issue, and that is the Namco Museum Collection 1 and 2. And the problem is that obviously the Evercade, when it first came out, it was just like the handheld system. And when they announced we're going to work on this, then something along the way was like there was a rights issue where Namco said like, we agreed to let you have the rights to like the Namco games, Pac-Man, Galaga, etc. to be able to have on a handheld system, and so they are not compatible with this. Like if you plug in the Namco collection, you will just get it come up on the screen saying Namco collection is not currently compatible with the Evercade VS. Please remove the cartridge. And you do that, and it like nothing's harmed anything, but it's just locked out. You cannot play the Namco cartridges on this machine. It does acknowledge this on the box, and it's a very weird one. Like I can't quite explain it, just because obviously like the Game Boy came out back in the day and you get the different games for it, and then later on Nintendo released the Super Game Boy, and then much later than that they released the Game Boy Player, where you plug the cartridges into something that wasn't a Game Boy, the Super Game Boy, or into the Game Boy Player, and then you'd be able to play games on your big screen TV. Now, why like there's some rights issue over the fact that surely the rights was just over the cartridge to be able to play on this system. If they make something else that's compatible with these, I don't know why there's an issue. Hopefully it's something they'll resolve. Obviously, the fact that this thing can connect to the internet, and maybe that was one of the main reasons this can connect to the internet, that one day you'll just get a download and then boom, you'll be able to play Pac-Man on there, and it'll be this day to celebrate. Now obviously, if you are going super retro and you don't connect this to the internet and never intend to, then even if that update comes, then it will mean that the Namco games will not be compatible on this. And that is something, again, to keep in mind for, like, if you pick one of these up and it's 20 years in the future from now, like I've got an Atari 7800, and imagine if I like bought that and was like, oh no, I need to do like an update, and like it's not the same Atari as it was back in the day, and you just can't do it anymore. So that is the risk when it comes to getting this with the Namco collection. But that is literally, there's 2 Namco collection cartridges. Namco's the only company where there's a rights issue, and there's about 26 different cartridges at time of making this video, which are all compatible both with this and with the original Evercade. So now let's begin to answer the question. Should you buy this? Should you buy this if you have already got this? If you buy this first, then should you buy this? These are all good questions, and I'm going to give you my opinion now. Now, if you have the original Evercade, you can connect this to the television, and then you can play the games on your big screen TV. The problem with that, and it's, look, how much are you willing to pay for this inconvenience? Because if I'm playing a game on my TV, but I've got to be holding the system itself, and it's got to have this micro HDMI rather, like plugged into the TV, and then you accidentally disconnect it, which I have done, and then it resets the system, that can be frustrating. Is that problem worth buying a whole new console over? For me, no. Now, if you want to play multiplayer games, you cannot do it with this. I don't know if there is a link cable. I think there is a link cable or some sort of cable so that you can connect this and use it as a controller on the Evercade. So then that is super going into the territory of... maybe, look, I need to test this because I don't have the cable, but maybe you can connect it and have one person playing on the screen and one on the TV. I don't think so. I think this just becomes a controller. Maybe in the future they'll update it, because obviously they would have 2 like brains of the computer. They would have like 2 processors to be able to handle such a thing. I just don't know if that's currently available. If it's not though, Blaze, who make this, add that feature. But being able to have the convenience of not having this cable, that alone isn't worth getting the Versus over. Being able to have multiplayer games, then great. If you want multiplayer games, like I said, I don't know if there is a link cable, but it's definitely going to be easier. The Evercade Premium Pack of the Versus comes with 2 of these, and you can have up to 4. And like we said, you can plug in, even if you've got one of these controllers, you can still play multiplayer games together. Being able to plug 2 cartridges into the system at once, does that make it worth getting the Evercade Versus over just having the original? And in my opinion, once again, that is no. But it's a case of, when do all of these little improvements add up to make it worth it? Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is that there are secret games. There's like a menu where you can put in a secret code, and so far I've discovered that there's like a couple of random, not very good admittedly, but a couple of random extra games which you can get, which I think are like almost like homebrew style games. Obviously they're officially released on this, if nothing else, but you might be able to get some bonus games. I've read about people putting in Atari cartridge 1 and Atari cartridge 2, and then you get some bonus extra Atari game just pop up. Now, obviously you can't do that if you can only plug in 1 cartridge, and I think they've done that to incentivize the idea of, well, if you play it on this, then you get some bonus extras. I think there's just as much reason why some people could be a little bit annoyed that obviously the data has to either be on the cartridges already, and they've just hidden it behind this, or that they are making it so it is just on this and it's actually hidden somewhere in the console. Who knows? So there we have the Evercade VS, the Evercade Versus, and to answer the question once and for all, should you get it? Now, if you don't have any Evercade, the big question will be, do you want to have that portable play? If you want to be able to have that portable play so that you're on a plane on a train, you go around to visit someone, then absolutely you want the original Evercade. You can connect it to the TV, and so in that sense you can still get the big screen experience. If you want to have multiplayer, have couch co-op on your TV, whether or not there's a link cable for the original Evercade, I'm not even sure, but you will need this. You will get the benefit of being able to play with this, or if you prefer to, then you can play with any other controller. There are hidden secret games which you can only get on this. Whether or not there'll be games which are only playable on the Versus in the future, I'm not sure. I think the idea is that these are just as powerful as each other, but obviously the Evercade Versus does have these extra L2 and R2 buttons, which does suggest that they think that there's going to be some things that use them which you won't be doing on this, because this does not have them. Overall, I would say the one to get would probably be the original, and that's just because I like playing it on my TV, and I've done well for a year being able to play this on my TV with that cable plugged in there, and then I can play this wherever I go. I can take my Evercade with me and be able to play games anywhere. So if you're only going to get one, I would say to get the original, but this is a very cool thing to have. It's a convenient thing to have. Like, these things, you know, they're not the cheapest things in the world, but they are hellishly cheap when you compare them to something like the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox or whatever. Now, when you get this and this, and then you think of it like a Nintendo Switch, where it's like, well, you can play games on this and then you can take them away because it's the same cartridges. When you add the prices up together, you are looking into similar territory to the price of a Nintendo Switch. But obviously, if you take your Nintendo Switch like with you out, then your friends, your loved one, whoever, they can't, they're just left with a dock. Whereas if you take this away to play something on the move, whoever's at home can still play games on the actual machine. So it does give a similar-ish experience to being able to play on the go and at home to the Nintendo Switch, but make no mistake, this is two separate devices, so it means that two people can be playing different games at the same time, so it's not a one-for-one comparison there. If you can afford both, then I would say, yeah, this is absolutely worth getting. If you want that multiplayer experience, then this is absolutely worth getting. If you don't ever really play, look, if you bought this and then you have just sat connected to the TV, then get this, then get the Evercade Versus, because this is the better experience to be able to sit and play on your television. It's got like a better controller, and again, you can plug in an even better controller to be able to play all of like the retro games, you know, on at home. I probably have enjoyed being able to have the convenience of being able to take this anywhere with me, being able to go from room to room. This is, you know, the Evercade VS is a small enough thing so that you can take it from room to room if you want, but just for the convenience, then I would say this is easier to take around. But if you want just to be able to plug in to your TV and like play some old like NES and Mega Drive games, you know, things that first appeared on like the Amiga or whatever, then this is a fantastic thing to get. And there's a bunch of cartridges now, like literally on the box it says there's over 260 games that you can play, and that's because there's about 25 different of these collections available. So with that, that's going to wrap things up today for my review of the Evercade Versus. Kind of almost reviewed the original Evercade as well, but I will do a separate video talking all about the pros and cons of the original Evercade device itself. But there we go, that's the Evercade VS. Let me know any thoughts you've got, any comments you've got. I try to answer everything that comes through. Are you an Evercade gamer? Are you thinking of getting one? Is there an alternative? You know, what are your thoughts on this device? Are you still on the fence? What is it going to be? Are you waiting for the right games? Are you waiting for the right multiplayer games to take advantage of those 4 ports on the front? Whatever you want, just like, you know, let us know. Let's talk about it in the comments. So that's going to wrap things up there. My name is David Pustansky. Please make sure you smash that subscribe button, and of course head over to XSTREAMED.tv, where we've got tons of like articles, podcasts, tons of videos like this. This channel now has got loads and loads of Evercade stuff on there, and I've got so many more like Evercade games that we are going to be like going through. So if you enjoy the Evercade, or if you just enjoy retro gaming or modern gaming, we're going to cover lots more in the future. Ciao for now.